Injustice. It is what permeates our very being, as if it is meant to be a collection of stars identified as its very own galaxy, radiating into each and everyone's life. Reaching its hands back thousands of years ago, touching the surfaces of racism, sexism, inequality, injustice. Mandela, Gandhi, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Chris Emdin, Malala Yousafzai, Colin Kaepernick, all standing in the face of injustice as if it was a Goliath the size of an entire universe, and their stones were only the size of a mustard seed. Separations, interrogations, violations make their presence known as if they are the only omnipresent beings that can overcome a place and its people. Though, here we are, 21st century, innovative, creative, acting as if injustice is outdated. Not even close, circumventing its society both explicitly and implicitly, as if it doesn't have an expiration date, that it was meant to haunt this life and the next one. Making its face in a sphere of every part of our society, its laws, regulations, practices, actions, governance, every single thing. Though one common place of attack is a place where everyone will eventually unite, whether past, present, or future, in the realm of education. Must we remember the wise words of Dr. King, as he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And though we might recover piece by piece, that one small speckle of injustice acts as though it is the M87, the darkest, deepest, oldest black hole that sucks the life out of every single thing that it meets. Thus, in the beginning, on a historical day in 1635, when taxpayers, aka colonizers, created systematic education in the first public school in this so-called land of the free, education was without justice and darkness was over it, as injustice used its gravitational force to pull it in and haunt it now and then, making it a mere science to escape its realm. Education in this nation, founded by those who colonized and stripped away the land, the minds, the lives of the indigenous, as if they were God himself and had the final say in their very own creations. Just as they have colonized the minds and bodies of children aged 5 to 18, as education is a regulation, serving as a daily prison with buildings standing old, musty, lacking in the so-called great equalizer, as minds and lives of individuals are in the chains as they face education and all of its rules, standards, from morning to eve, as if only their lives matter if they meet standards and follow the rule that was dictated by the white man upon his approval. Letters and numbers being more important than worthiness, trust, skills. A, B, C, not only letters in an alphabet, symbols assign numbers that measure worth, success, standards, those good for the continuation of a birth certificate or advancement to the next level. D's, F's, failure, unrest, signing up for your very own death where you're bottled and bagged to be put into a casket, tormented by failure if it was your new name, your worth, your life. Sitting still in a line of row chairs and desks, watching as teachers stand up for themselves and students because of life and its differences, where they take a paycheck that is a mere fraction of the education's systematic creators, many of which have never stepped foot in to teach in a classroom to learn about its students, yet educators being overcome by anxiety each day that their children will not meet standards, that their salaries won't allow them to be able to purchase new pencils so that their children can even write, and that they could never actually be them true selves in a classroom because they have been dictated and governed and regulated to teach by standards and curriculum, to maintain tradition and teach white history in the textbooks as if it were the very religion of this nation and all of its inhabitants. Grades, rules, regulations, education. Though we live in a land of the free, where democracy is supposed to act as if it's the core of its people, like that of a core of an apple, giving it livelihood and support. Yet we live in the United States of America, the so-called democracy, that we have a board of education acting as if it is the newest and the oldest communistic party, imprinting its lives on everyone it touches, just like that of colonizers empowering themselves upon the rule of every single entity that they meet. free-thinking individuality swept away by a tide in the ocean in which you'll never regain your force. Well, only if you're standard, passing, accepted, not rejected in the face of so-called education. Are we teaching students? Are we preaching to students? There's a difference, you see. One's more free while the other is setting up the closest pathway to hell just if a student fails. So what's the answer? How do we create justice in education where children can be set free from the rules that are chaining their minds, their spirits, their bodies in shackles? 1. Pedagogy, methodology, theory, education, and practice. Pedagogical structure differs like that of snowflakes, no two form just alike. Those similarities radiate like that of beams of the sun, melting away difference, turning to tradition. Interrupting the line by line, row by row, hand by hand standards taught. Stay silent, raise your hand if you want to speak, use the restroom, see the guidance counselor, sleep, eat, ask a question, breathe. Allowing students to speak whenever they have a statement, feeling expression to voice, leaving the classroom to nature's call without being told by an adult, yes, you can or no, you cannot. Eating a snack when they're hungry rather than a 15-minute period allotted for snack time in K through 5 or in a no food allowed classroom in high school. Refusing to lecture out of the same books that have rested their dusty backs against the broken, beaten, screeching bookshelves for decades, most which are written by white persons who feel as if they're the saviors and fly on the walls of every piece of history, art, mathematics, literature, or any God-blessed subject to create the white man as a savior as he thinks, and the stereotypical American dream, rather than the oppressor, aggressor, or lesser than. Avoiding tradition and the colonizing tendency it's creating. Being a decolonizer like Mrs. Garcia, opening up to a new, real literature that showcases the truth and nothing but the truth about the nation and all that it has and will do to those subject to oppression. Opening classrooms like the open veins outstretched by this nation, digging deeper, spreading wider than ever before, portraying open classroom pedagogy like that which embodied and multiplied the success of Central Park East as it allowed both its students and teachers to think freely, act individually, and create boldly, rather than being subject to standards of a system that is broken as a shattered mirror causing bad luck. Within its openness, democratic schooling offered by explicit change rather than chance, that allows for individual thought, speech, and practice. Co-teaching as outlined by Emden that shreds the degree given educators a title into pieces, disqualifying them from their sovereignty and smartness that make them feel as if they're the experts on issues of every single thing like oppression, sexism, racism, war, xenophobia, and more. Allowing for students to teach their experiences with free minds, souls, and spirits. And acting as a teacher who acknowledges that racism still exists and their positionality of whiteness that the majority of educators within this nation still hold, that has made them all colorblind to the world of which we call education. Administrators and educators using logic and emotion to refute the media, giving students a voice in a world where they're often silenced. Praising cultural difference, sustaining culture in its uniqueness, the value of separate languages and the students' uncontrollable tongues, the importance of Chicanx history, Raza studies, Native history. Acknowledging that the founders of this land were bigots, formulating the destruction of the society long before its restoration. Racist like that of the townspeople attacking Atticus for his defense of justice against racism of the black man, and opposite of the American dream that millions wish for upon every shooting star they catch from the falling midnight sky. Letting the mouths of what the world calls babes shout their experiences, cultures, and mindsets from their very own mouth that are raging like their throats as tasers, tongues as swords, and grins as grenades, ready to blow your mind and rock your world. ripping up the 9th edition outdated white-rated textbooks developed by Pearson as if you had the spirit of Mr. Keating, letting education come through real-life issues and experiences of the children of our future rather than recalling the history of past just so students can pass a standard. Act like Gutstein rather than the systematic approaches doctrine to you that only someone like DeVos or Trump would ever praise. Nonetheless, leading to a culturally sustaining, open-ended containing, democracy-filled retaining classroom. 2. Restorative justice, healing, treating the hearts and minds of students as if it were that of a wound bleeding, forcing a Band-Aid over it because isn't that a standard? Creating trust and worth among students in the face of hurt and failure that penetrates the very lives of students in yet another way, reminding them that they are an average and a standard, thus systematically labeling them as incapable and worthless in face of failure. Fostering a place where restoration, trust, and relationships are more important than the grades on a paper or the feeling of ignorance. Similar to that of which Wadwa advocates as the mending the lives of students like thread does a hole in a ripped garment. In creating relationships within schools like that of a flock of birds that help each other through the good and bad, like none ever before. Feelings being erased like I, the student, will never be good enough based on a grade or a suspension after being called a racist name and punching a white kid in the face. Coming together in times of hate and injustice, understanding and loving, healing over hurt. Listening and understanding experiences over lectures that will be forgotten tomorrow. Learning the hearts, the minds, the souls of every single student's bodies that line the chairs of their desk. Creating circles within a classroom that function like the circle of life, moving each and every individual through times of despair, times of success, times of hate, times of love, times of hurt, times of gratitude, times of unknowingness and immense knowledge. Teaching the importance of restoration in the face of zero-tolerance policies that only punish, rather than teach. The restorative justice that disassembles the reproductive cycle of punishing minorities, setting them up for failure like that of which the oppressor is perfected throughout history. A setting of reconciliation, a foundation of trust, and a community which closeness connects the minds and creates links within a classroom and school, beyond all of its single parties, administrators, teachers, and students alike. 3. Inclusivity, including all races, ethnicities, cultures, genders, sexual identities, religions, socioeconomic statuses. Fostering diversity in every single person, their minds, their skills, and unique traits. Ensuring that racism is discussed in its past, present, and future form, acknowledging it like that of Landru, even if it means facing resistance from those who oppose and putting oneself on the line, like Baldwin said, going for broke. Appreciating and accepting each and every person despite the color of their skin that in society has mattered more than the most important skills or one's incredible worth. To carry out the dream of Dr. King as he stood in the face of racism and segregation. Taking a stand against any and every form of segregation as it separates the steps to justice like a cup of oil thrown into a bowl of water as it separates. Thinking whichever God or entity that one believes in that there is difference and that no two people are exactly alike. That diversity flourishes so that we can advance, innovate, and create. Incorporating cultural differences into systematic and scholastic approaches, teaching about lands other than our own, acknowledging the beauty and uniqueness within language and what it gives to every individual group, the unity and polyphony that can permeate a classroom like water filling a sponge. Advocating for strides beyond heteronormativity and the binary that is created by yeses and nos, girls and boys, teaching the badass abilities of women in education, just as Dr. Gibbs, when naming women in education Las Traviesas, Mrs. Garcia as she decolonizes the eeriness of what education wants to teach. and Malala as she fights for education, women. Teaching that each and every person can wear pink, paint their nails, kiss their lover regardless of any identity, and be accepted rather than rejected in a society where queers are treated like aliens. Voting for a school board member who identifies as an LGBTQIA plus community member, and advocating for the incorporation of gender and sexuality to be taught from multiple perspectives. Integrating all students into the classroom like that of which Shalaby discusses. Understanding that the outstanding comes in ways beyond which we may understand. That there is no dis, rather just abled. And that those who might look or learn different can touch your soul and teach you things that Einstein never even could. Dismantling the minds of students that are bound by not only the number or letter they receive on a test, but the poverty that exists in their lives. Each day as they question whether they will have a dinner awaiting for them at home or come into school the next morning with a stomach growling. If they can even get shoes to fit them as their toes push the surface against the top of their shoe, since their mother is in prison and father is working 60+ hours a week to make ends meet to support his 4 kids. Teaching like Gutstein that poverty is and always will be of the essence as long as we live in a land of oppression and inequality. Refuting the school board as it demands for more stable, economically gifted students to be tracked into higher learning classrooms, where they take letter AP courses, 2 letters that will later haunt the students who have been subject to poverty before they were even born. Debunking the myth that students of color or students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds lack intelligence and somehow have less smarts. Standing up to Devo as she strives to take away the funding for Special Olympics, and Trump as he threatens students who can or have received DACA. Sessions as he advocates for higher funding for AP courses that track rather than the salaries of the teachers who are teaching the students of those who hold his very tomorrows. Fostering inclusivity that acknowledges each and every mind as its own with immense value of equal importance. Allowing equity for all in a place that aims for ultimate equality. Social justice education. Social justice has been attempted for thousands of years by activists of all kinds. Though injustice continues to suck the life out of the majority of the minority, since the majority continues to oppress, obsess, and ignore the success of the minority. And injustice in any way, shape, or form continues to threaten the attempts of social justice. So let this be your call. Since Mandela once said that education is the most powerful weapon in which we can change the world. Will you let that change be for the good or the bad? This is why I'm standing here talking to you on an individual level and inviting you to too be an individual that takes a stance and acts against injustice in education. Because I believe in order to see change, an individual must be the change they wish to see in the world. So, can this start with you?